or known as OHW, which has three key areas. Those are multi-sectoral engagement, education and training, and institutional strengthening. Since 2014, OHW project has been implemented in 2 continents in Africa, known as One Health Central, and Eastern Africa as OHCEA, and in Asia, known as Southeast One Health University Network, or COHUN. The collaboration has spread across 162 faculties and 84 universities in 12 countries. As one of the biggest archipelago countries with vast diversity, Indonesia plays an important role in global health. Indonesia One Health University Network, or known as IndoHUN, is the frontline and pioneer in advocating human capacity One Health workforce. Established in 2012, IndoHUN focuses on fostering One Health collaboration in Indonesia that encourages multi-professions effort to combat emerging health problems in human, animal, and the environment. Stated in National Long-Term Development Plan, RPJP, our vision aligns perfectly with this, and those are education and training, multi-sectoral engagement, and institutional strengthening. IndoHUN established a collaborative center at the university level called One Health Collaborating Center, or known as OHCC. OHCC was formed from 2015 to 2019 and located throughout strategic areas in Indonesia. In 2015, IndoHUN formed the first OHCC at Gajah Mada University. In 2016, IndoHUN formed OHCC Udayana University. In 2017, IndoHUN formed OHCC Airlangga University. In 2018, IndoHUN formed OHCC Syakwala University. And in 2019, IndoHUN formed OHCC Cendrawasih University. From 2015 to 2019, a total of 52 educational programs, 27 community outreach programs, and 17 research studies have been conducted by OHCC. Until now, 3,622 people have participated in OHCC activities, and 24,197 people have benefited from the existence of OHCC. OHCC has also conducted various programs and collaborated with various institutions such as University of Montpellier, University of Tokyo, Hokkaido University, UNSW Australia, Nivea, Nikkei Diagnostic Center, OIE, CIRAD, Gryphon Scientific, and Veterinary Domain Public-Private Partnership. What we have done is not finished yet. There are still many tasks which need to be done to improve national and global health. We understand that it is a complex challenge and impossible to be solved alone. Through coordination and strengthening collaboration across sectors, disciplines, and countries, we can tackle global health problems and challenges together. Less me, more we. IndoHUN social media channels: Instagram @indohun.id, Twitter @indohun, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Indonesia One Health University Network. Website indohun.org.
Hello, my name is Wayan Tunas Artama as a coordinator of One Health Collaborating Center at Gajah Mada University. We held a Komodo Summer Course in 2019. The participants has come from many different countries. They come from 7 countries. They come from Belgium, from Zimbabwe, from Nigeria, from Vietnam, from the Philippines, from Thailand, and from East Timor. And we have a speaker, expert, very expert, that's come from 2 from Japan, 1 from Australia, 1 from France, 2 from the Philippines, 1 from Vietnam, and the 6 come from Indonesia. We hope that our summer course will be fruitful for the future of our wildlife and also for the university. And also we do hope that summer course will be improve our understanding about the Komodo and wildlife. Thank you.
The dragon of the East. Komodo dragons are the largest lizard that still exists. When they reach 20 kilograms of body weight, they will live fully on the ground, where they will start using a wait and ambush strategy to hunt their prey, which are larger mammals like deer, wild boars, horses, and even buffalo. Sometimes they even kill another dragon. This is Komodo, the dragon of the East, who needs our help to survive.
Over the past several decades, many previously unknown
Hello, my name is Wayan Tunas Artama as a coordinator of One Health Collaborating Center at Gajah Mada University. We held a Komodo Summer Course in 2019. The participants has come from many different countries. They come from 7 countries. They come from Belgium, from Zimbabwe, from Nigeria, from Vietnam, from the Philippines, from Thailand, and from East Timor. All participants, 15 participants from abroad, and we have a speaker, very expert lecturer that's come from two from Japan, one from Australia, one from France, two from the Philippines, one from Vietnam, and another 6 come from Indonesia. We hope that our summer course will be fruitful for the future of our wildlife and also for the university. And also we do hope that summer course will be improved our understanding about the Komodo and wildlife. Thank you.
The dragon of the East. Komodo dragons are the largest lizard that still exists. When they reach 20 kilograms of body weight, they will live fully on the ground, where they will start using a wait and ambush strategy to hunt their prey, which are larger mammals like deer, wild boars, horses, and even buffalo. Sometimes they even kill another dragon. This is Komodo, the dragon of the East, who needs our help to survive.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning and evening for wherever you are. It's very wonderful to see you here in our third webinar and our first international webinar on Indonesian wildlife diversity, potential diseases transmitted by wildlife, and ecology and conservation of Komodo. I think we have an amazing opportunity to bring us together for the awareness of One Health application in this network from all over the world: America, Great Britain, the Netherlands, France, Germany, India, South Africa, Singapore, Japan, Thailand, Philippines, Timor, and of course, from all over Indonesia, from Java, Sumatra, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, Papua, Bali, Nusa Tenggara, and also from a lot of institutions such as IBB University, Komodo Survival Program, Komodo National Park, Ministry of Tourism Indonesia, and other variety of institutions. I cannot not mention them all here since we are already more than 970 people registered to this webinar. Wow, it's amazing. Okay, I'll introduce myself. My name is Kesara Sastrin Prasita Negara. You can call me Sastrin. I'm one of the staff of One Health Collaborating Center, Universitas Gadjah Mada, or OHCC UGM, as part of Indonesia One Health University Network, or Indohun, as part of Southeast Asia One Health University Network, or SIHUN. We are included in One Health Workforce Next Generation, or OHWNG, hosted by UC Davis, USA, sponsored by United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. And I have the honor of taking us today during this webinar. So I will start to share my screen. Okay. I think it's already in full screen. Okay, so the agenda for today, first it will be welcome speech from Prof. Wayan Tunas Artama, the coordinator of One Health Collaborating Center. And then there will be speaker session number 1 from Pak Joko Pamungkas from IPB University and OHEL in Indohun. The topic is diseases transmitted by wildlife. And then it will continue with Q&A session 1. And after that, we continue to our second topic with the speakers Ahmad Arif Yandi or Mas Repo from Komodo Survival Program and IUCN. He will talk about introduction of Komodo. And then it will continue with Timothy Jessop or Tim. He's from Deakin University, Australia, and he will talk about ecology of Komodo. And then we have Q&A session 2 and lastly closing. Before we start, we will run to some housekeeping items. So please rename yourself with your name and your institution by clicking in the participants list and then click on your name. On the right of your name, there is the 3 dots there. Click there and then rename with your name and your institution. And then you can ask the speakers during the webinar using Q&A icon with the format name/institution, and then the speaker's name that you want to ask, and then the question. Other issues may be asked in the chat room. The link for e-certificates will be shared in the end of this webinar. And the e-certificate will be shared through emails about 1 week after the webinar. The materials will be shared if there is permission from the speakers. So this session is being recorded in YouTube Live. You can also check in the channel bit.ly/OHCCUTM, and your attendance is consent to be recorded. Okay, we can start our session with a welcome speech from Prof. Wayan Tunas Artama. Please, Prof. Wayan, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Sastrin. Good morning, good afternoon, guten Morgen, participant from Germany, konnichiwa, participant from Japan, and bonjour, participant from France. Selamat siang untuk participant Indonesia. On behalf of One Health Collaborating Center, Universitas Gadjah Mada, and Indohun, I would like personally welcome each of you on the international webinar series today, June 30, 2020. First of all, I would like to thank our distinguished speakers today, Dr. Tim Jessop from Australia. Thank you for your participation, Tim. Dr. Joko Pamungkas from University of IPB, Bogor, Indonesia. And one of our distinguished another speaker is Ahmad Arif Yandi, MAC. He is really expert on Komodo. He will explain us the sociology of Komodo and ecology of Komodo. He is come from survival program, Komodo survival program, Indonesia. As mentioned by speaker by Sastrin just before, the participants are from 13 countries, including France, Germany, the Netherlands, UK, Belgium, USA, South Africa, India, Japan, Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, and East Timor, and of course, Indonesia. Through this webinar, I thought we connected each other through virtual connected each other. They are scientists, students, teachers, practitioners. All of us will experience about wildlife diversity from the and role of wildlife in the transmitting of the disease from animal to the human being, and also an addition an ecology of Komodo, one of the ancient dragon in East dragon that's still alive in the world. In connection to that, next year we will have a summer course on July, at the middle of July 2021 on Komodo summer course. Please, if you interest, register to our website. Last but not least, thank you for you all participants. We do hope we can learn and share our knowledge, our experiences in the webinar. Good luck and enjoy the webinar. Thank you so much. Sasrin, okay.
Thank you, Prof. Wayan. So we will continue our next agenda, which is the speaker session. The first speaker for today is Dr. Joko. I'll start to share my screen to give you an overview of his CV. So Dr. Joko is an associate professor of microbiology, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, IPB University. He's also a researcher at Primate Research Center, IPB University. And he's also a coordinator of One Health Laboratory Network, or Indonesia One Health University Network, or OHLN Indohun. He graduated from Bachelor of Veterinary Science and Doctor of Veterinary Medicine in IPB University, and he continued his master in the University of Washington, USA, and he finished his PhD in University of Indonesia. Please welcome Pak Joko Pamungkas. The screen is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mbak Sisrin.
Sasrin.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So it is an honor for me to be here to share our experiences in Indonesia, especially my involvement in some of the works in doing the surveillance of several families of viruses in wildlife. And of course, I will not be able to present all varieties of wildlife surveillance. So if I may share my presentation, please give me the permission. I'm still not allowed to present the slide. Host disabled attendees to share screen.
Okay, Pak Joko.
Thank you, Mbak Sastrin. So in this occasion, I would like to thank the organizer of this webinar, the OHCC, One Health Collaborating Center of University Gajah Mada, to give me some opportunity to share the experiences we have done. I'm still not allowed, yeah. Maybe you have to click on my icon, and then there are 3 dots, and you will give me. Okay.
Sorry, Pak Joko.
Yeah. Okay now. Okay. So it's on the screen now.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So the title given to me is Diseases Transmitted by Wildlife. And once again, as I said earlier, that I will not be able to cover every single diseases transmitted by wildlife. So basically, I will try to share with you our experiences in doing some surveillance in wildlife in Indonesia, which is very limited, of course, and not all over Indonesia, only in Sulawesi Island, in different provinces. So for disclaimer, for this presentation is based on the co-author's activity and the information gathered from various journals published, but may not include all information available until today. And I should mention here that among others, these are the major key persons who has been contributing to the works as well in Indonesia or my to surveillance, as well as the slides that I presented. Not all of the slides are created by myself, but these are contributors to the slides. The names on the brown color is actually are from primate research centers at IPB, and the names on blue is a person from EcoHealth Alliance, New York, USA. Okay, this slide shows us some examples of the emerging infectious diseases emerged in several decades and even centuries. But I did not also include everything, but there are Spanish flu emerged in 1918, and then Ebola, Marburg virus, initially emerged in 1976, followed by second outbreaks in 1979. And then following that in early 1981, AIDS also emerged in the United States, and then later on, the virus causing AIDS called HIV was identified in 1983. And then in 1998, Nipah virus outbreak occurred in Malaysia. That was actually a follow-up of outbreaks of Hendra virus in Australia in 1994. And then 2002, SARS emerged, and also MERS emerged 2012. And then other diseases also emerged later on. And nowadays, we are experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic, which also involved or affecting many countries, more than 200 countries now affected. And among the other zoonoses that are found worldwide, these are several family of virus that should be paid attention to. The first one is Rhabdopiridae, which also cause rabies in dogs and in humans. And then Paramyxoviridae to contain the Nipah and Hendra viruses, Retropiridae, SIV, etc., etc. So these are the families that were reported to have been involved in zoonosis, causing diseases in humans from animals. So to give you probably just a background, a little bit basic of the information about zoonosis. Zoonosis is zoonotic disease, is a disease that is transmitted from animals to humans or vice versa. In this case, we recognize two terminology. One is anthropozoonosis, and the second one is the zooanthroponosis. Anthropozoonosis is a disease transmitted from animals to humans, while the zooanthroponosis is a disease that is transmitted from humans to animals. So it could be one direction only, but it could also be two directional. And up to today, more than 60% of the emerging infectious diseases are zoonotic. They are coming from animals. And out of these zoonotic diseases, 75% are actually associated with wildlife. So we are very concerned about the human-animal interface because of this situation. And this is just some other information that most zoonotic diseases can be prevented by wearing appropriate PPE, application of best practice procedure, and also washing your hands. This is a minimal for like a personal hygiene that we should do, we should practice from day by day. These are the drivers that could also potentially drive the emergence of diseases. So among these many drivers, I also noted here that the land use change actually has a major role, up to 30%, more than 30%. Yeah. And then the agricultural industry change also has a quite significant influence, 15%. Bushmeat about 3%, while human demography and human behavior contributes about 4% of the emergence of diseases. And because of this land use change, it may cause deforestation. And again, said this will also causing the habitat degradations and habitat fragmentation for the wildlife. And according to these articles, so the land use change could lead to disease emergence by two hypotheses. The first one, the increasing opportunities for wildlife, human, and domestic animals contacts, and this will cause spillover of pathogens from wildlife either to livestock or to human beings. Yeah. And the second hypothesis, the land use change is also altering host pathogen ecological dynamics, and this will cause some cross-species transmission, which is called the perturbation hypothesis. This is just a picture to give you some example land use change that occurs in many countries, not only Indonesia, but may also some other Southeast Asia country, as well as the Southern American. And to give you also some information, there has been some information observed about the viral richness in mammals. Yeah. So the right panel here showing us the density of viruses that also present in several orders of mammals. Yeah. So these are the orders of mammals. While the left panel showing us about the proportion of zoonotic viruses that may be harbored by these orders of mammals. And out of these many mammals orders, we identified, or not we, myself, I mean, yeah, but these scientists that published this paper, they identified that 3 orders, i.e. the Chiroptera, primates, and Rodentia, are the most orders with proportionate zoonotic viruses that can be transmitted to human. So, according to the paper by Dr. Karas 2012, yeah, the emergence of EID actually could be described about the spillover from the wildlife to livestock or to human beings. So basically, there are some virus distribution or virus, virus distribution in wildlife that occurs every time in year. So if this curve actually is the description about the presence of viral distribution from wildlife. So at any time, this virus available in the field can jump or spill over to other species. such as to livestock. Yeah, here described by the uh, curve colored with green, or it could also spill over to infect human beings, and this will be described by the curve in red. Yeah, and this could occur anytime where human-animal interface is occurring, or maybe livestock-wildlife interface could also cause some spillover of the virus from the wildlife to livestock. And if we actually could do surveillance, routine surveillance of the virus in wildlife, so we could map whatever is distributing in the wild. So then if we identified a certain virus with potential zoonotic potential, so we could avoid the spillover from wildlife to livestock or wildlife to human beings. Sorry. So these slides also describe about how leverage of the initial spillover among the wildlife to livestock or maybe to humans, yeah. And then this is what we call stage one as a pre-emergence of disease, yeah. And then the stage two actually a localized emergence. So basically it will infect also human beings, but localized, not to the worldwide. While when it becomes pandemics, the human to human transmission may occur, and this will also becoming worldwide and pandemic situation like COVID-19 at this moment. Yeah. To give you some examples of the human-animal interface, these are one thing that human behavior actually play a role in making these viruses infecting human beings from wildlife. And in this case, I give you some picture here about pet huntings that is also occurred in many parts of the world, not Indonesia only. And even in Indonesia, it's not only happening in Sulawesi only, but it could also happening in Kalimantan or Sumatra or somewhere else. And it could also happening also Southeast Asia countries as well as in China as we learn about COVID-19. So initially, the hunters will hunt this pet, yeah, from the habitats, the natural habitats, and then they will pull at certain location before actually the middleman will pick up these animals and transport it to the markets. And these are the some pictures we captured in wet markets in Sulawesi, North Sulawesi. Basically, they will sell anything from bats and rodents, the rats, where they call it the white-tailed rats. And also, we notice that some markets are selling the endangered species of macaques, yeah, the macaca nigra, and they are selling day to day together with other daily needs. So basically, there are potential contamination of this wildlife to also some daily needs in the markets. This is the traffic. Basically, the markets are available in mostly northern part of Sulawesi. So all supermarkets, restaurants, and wet markets are in North Sulawesi. But because of the low density or the low population of bats and rodents and other wildlife in North Sulawesi, because of their exploitation from the past, nowadays they have to import, I quote unquote, import from different provinces in Sulawesi, such as from Southeast Sulawesi, West Sulawesi, Central Sulawesi, and also South Sulawesi. So the other provinces, this is the other one, Gorontalo. Yeah, the other provinces which are providing this wildlife, actually, there are very little consumers. So basically, the consumers are concentrating in northern part of Sulawesi, and we can see that nowadays some frozen meats from wildlife also sold in supermarket. So not only in wet markets, but also supermarket will sell frozen meat of wildlife. And these are pictures from restaurants. This is to show you the natural habitats of fruit bats in Gorontalo, especially. Many fruit bats actually homing at the mangrove forest. Yeah? So basically, these are the home of the fruit bats. And some of the mangroves becomes dried, yeah. But when it is dried, the population will move to other parts of the mangrove, and this will start to green, um, to grow the leaves and everything else, and it becomes green again. So basically, naturally, that the bats are not disturbing the habitats. At some point, it will become dried, but then it will later on becomes green again because of the guanos and some other species, yeah, that are actually defecated around this area, and it will also give some nutrient to the mangrove trees. Yeah. This is to give you some pictures about how we capture rodents. Yeah. And as I mentioned, only certain species of rodents are consumed in northern Sulawesi. They only consume the white-tailed rodents, the white-tailed rats. Why? When we question them, because they know that they are not eating any kind of food. They only eat vegetables and also fruits. So they consider that these rats are cleaned or cleaner than the rats in the community, and they call it vegetarian rats. Okay, so this picture is also to give you some ideas how we sample the specimens from the bats and from the rats. We prioritize the sample specimens to obtain from throat swabs from pig feces or fecal or rectal swabs, yeah. And then urines, if the animals is not urinating, then we just take the genital swabs, yeah, and also bloods and tissue specimens. And we have to maintain the cold chains in order to make sure that the quality of the specimens are still good, transported from the field to the lab. Yeah, so we use the liquid nitrogen tanks and also the dry ice in shipping through the airline. These are the data that we gathered from the first phase of Predict Indonesia. The human aspect are done by colleagues from the Eichmann Institute for Molecular Biology in Jakarta, while the wildlife aspect are done by the Prime Research Center in IPB University, Bogor. So we noticed that several paramyxoviruses, new paramyxoviruses at the time, also several coronaviruses, and this is including the beta coronavirus, yeah? And some other viruses also present from the wildlife we sampled in Predict 1. We also conducted specimen surveillance from 2014 to 2019, but the data is not published yet because we need to get authorized from the national authority. So speaking about the COVID-19, so basically it is caused by SARS-CoV-2 or SARS coronavirus type 2 to differentiate from the SARS-CoV-1 that emerged in 2002, 2003. So according to this map, yeah, the distribution of SARS SARS-related coronavirus in bats, yeah, actually are not only in China but also in Southeast Asia, yeah, and probably also in Indonesia because potentially we have not done any survey yet, but in Indonesia, these three big islands, Java, Sumatra, and Kalimantan, we also have Rhinolopus affinis, the species of bats that is known to have this SARS-CoV-2 or initial SARS-CoV-2 viruses in China. So for recommendations, because this is will be something that we need to look forward, to get attention to, that we need to have this One Health approach to control infectious disease, which are potentially becoming pandemic. So we need to collaborate, we need to communicate, to coordinate, yeah, cross sectors and in the government, also cross-disciplinary, yeah, among the scientists and also the cross professionals, yeah. So not only medical doctors or veterinarians, but also biologists, conservationists, and also some other professions that should also take parts in these collaborations, and of course cross regions. And we need to perform preventive approach, such as routine surveillance on wildlife, and then surveillance triangulation, which is actually done to survey on, sadly, I forgot to translate it, yeah, wildlife, livestock, and human. So all three taxa should be surveyed about the presence of the viruses. And also we need to also considering to survey in pets or exotic animals or animals to be used in hobbies. And not last but not the least, we need to also put a campaign to stop disturbing wildlife. By doing so, we will preserve animal population as well as the habitats and also the feed resource for this wildlife. So basically, these are the recommendations that we should take for the next time. We also published some policy brief on how to stop or to minimize the hunting of bats in several areas in Sulawesi. So we have conveyed this information to the authorized ministry in Indonesia. I think that is all I can share with you. Thank you very much. So I give the time to Mbak Astrin again. Mbak Astrin.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pak Joko Pamungkas, for the fantastic presentation. We get new insight today that we have to apply One Health approach to control, but also to prevent emerging infectious diseases from wildlife, especially during the stage 3, right, from COVID-19 pandemic situations, that we become more aware of the importance of One Health. So we move on to our next session, which is directly question and answer session 1. I will pass it on to one of my colleagues, Putu, for this session. Please, Putu.
Thank you, Sastrin. Hello, everyone. I am Putu Tri. Everybody can hear my sound, right? My voice, right?
Okay. Can you increase the volume?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Joko, for your enlightening presentation. It was so interesting, and I believe it's not only for me but also for the participants today. And we have some questions here, and maybe I can see that 2 people is raising their hands, so maybe they can ask live. But first, we have one question from Alexander Morados. Of the 5 classes of vertebrates, including reptiles, amphibians, mammals, birds, and fishes, Which of them carry or transmit the most diseases to human, and which is the least carrier, and why?
This out of the 5 classes of vertebrates.
Yeah.
So as I showed you in some one of the slides about the richness of viruses in mammals, so 3 orders actually harboring more viruses that are potentially zoonotic than other orders. So those are the Chiroptera or the bats, yeah, and then the primates, non-human primates, as well as the rodents. So those are the 3 uh, orders according to some scientific reports from 1980 through 2004 that was published in 2008 by Johnson. And actually, this paper is quite famous that uh, showing us that the 3 taxa or the 3 orders are among the other orders in mammals that harboring viruses potentially zoonotic. And why? Because some according to this paper also, this viruses in this taxa, some of them are not showing any clinical symptoms. They play a role as a reservoir, while human becomes the fatal host. So once the virus infect human beings, it becomes clinical symptoms, and also the disease occur. Um, I think that should answer the question.
Yeah, thank you. I hope for Mr. or Mrs. I don't know, Alexander Moradus can understand your questions. Thank you. And the next question, maybe he or she means about because you are working with the wildlife in the nature. So he asked about how did you know that you didn't do the sampling with the same animal in wildlife? Maybe like the same individual that
Yeah,
you work again with the same animal. Maybe can bring any bias on your research.
yeah. To be honest, this is a very tough question to answer. In the beginning, when we try to do all the capture by ourselves, meaning that we have to do some active samplings. To be honest, all the samples that we collected are not only the ones that we actively sampling or capture from the animals, but we also did sample specimens from the hunter. So Predict, of course, has some policy that we can only take samples from hunters when we are not encouraging them. So with or without our presence in the field, they actually do hunt the animals. So we have to be really careful identifying the groups of hunters. So when we have to capture the animals ourselves, yes, we have to make some what do you call it, signs or to make sure that it has been sampled. So basically, we're doing some ear clipping or ear tearing, yeah, punching to the animals. And then that will be sure that we will not sample the same animal for the second time. And for the, as I said, opportunistic sampling that we carried out from the hunters, basically after we sample these animals, they will sell the animals to the market. So we are very sure that they will not come back because they will be consumed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. From the same person, maybe this is for the last question. Do you think COVID-19 has been mutated for SARS 2003? What do you think about the conspiration that some not responsible researchers make this virus become virulent? I think it's becoming most of the issue for these recent years.
Yeah, it's very interesting to learn about conspirations theory. But again, I'm still standing for the scientists that are doing all the research in China and all over the world. Yeah. The SARS-CoV-1 isolates from 2003 actually are still further related to SARS-CoV-2. But we also learned from the scientists that there is a virus from bats, originated from bat. We call it rat G13, which actually is having closely relationship with this SARS-CoV-2, and this has been isolated from bats from 2013. That was in the efforts of scientists to hunt or to survey for the cause of MERS in 2012. So they actually had some bats coronaviruses, and they stored it, and they identified later that it has some close relatedness with SARS-CoV-2 causing the COVID-19. Over.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Joko. I think because we are running our time for this question and answer section, I have to close these first sections. I am sorry for everyone that we cannot answer all of your questions now, but don't worry, as long as Dr. Joko with us, he will be able to answer your questions by chat through the question and answer box. So again, I would like also to remind for all of the participants to write down your question in the question and answer box, not in the chat room, because if you write down your question in the chat room, the panelists or the speaker will not notice it, and they couldn't read your question, and they will not answer your question as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Joko, for your presentation and your lecture for this afternoon. I will give the screen back to Sastrin. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Pravayan.
Okay, thank you, Putu, for moderating the question and answer session 1. We go to the next session. Our second speaker today is Ahmad Arifiandi, or Mas Revo, or Mas Ahmad. I will start to share my screen to give you an overview of Mas Ahmad. So, Mas Revo or Mas Ahmad is a project manager for Research and Conservation Program, Komodo Survival Program, Bali, Indonesia. He also worked in Monitor Lizard Specialist Group, IUCN. He finished his degree in Faculty of Biology, Universitas Gadjah Mada, and he continued his master in Faculty of Science, the University of Melbourne. So that's all. I will give the screen to Mas Ahmad. Please, Mas Ahmad, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Mbak Sastrin. And thank you for the organizer, Prof. Wayan. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
I'll start to share my screen for my talk. Let's wait. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished participants. I will now start the second topic of today for this webinar. My name is Ahmad Arifiandi from Komodo Survival Program. Our organization is working in collaboration with the National Park, and also the PBKSD NTT to research program and monitoring program and conservation activities for Komodo dragon. Today, I would like to talk about the introduction of the Komodo dragon, and later on, Mr. Tim Jessup will talk a bit more about the ecology and conservation. Komodo dragon is a reptile that belongs to Varanid family. There are more than 70 species of Varanid that can be found in Asia, Africa, and Australia. In Australia, the Varanid also called goannas. This animal, however, cannot be found in America and Europe. In Indonesia, there are 29 species of Varanid, and we call it as biawak. One of the biggest and the famous one of the biawak family is Varanus komodoensis. In Indonesia, the species is officially called as biawak komodo, the name that has given to the species based on the location where it first described on the early 19th century by P.A. Owen, the Komodo Island. People in Komodo, on the other hand, call the species as ora, and on Flores, they call it Sembau, Rugu, and Buaya Darat. The common name in English for this species is Komodo dragon or Komodo monitor. Komodo dragon is a protected species. The IUCN categorized this animal as vulnerable, and it's also listed as Appendix 1 in CITES category. Indonesian government has also protected this animal by Indonesian law, which are the Undang-Undang Nomor 5 1990 and also Peraturan Pemerintah Nomor 7 1999. Komodo dragon also a flagship species and endemic to Indonesia. Problem with this, sorry. This large predator, uniquely, has a very narrow and restricted distribution area. It only can be found in the eastern part of Indonesia, the Lesser Sunda region or East Nusa Tenggara. In Nusa Tenggara Timur, Komodo dragon can be found in Komodo National Park and also on the west coast of Flores Island from the Waiwul Reserve to Karitamese Peninsula. On the northern coast, the animal can also be found in Longos Island, Wata District, Torong Padang Peninsula, and the Tree Reserve in Riau. Komodo dragon in Komodo National Park, it's slightly darker compared to those in Flores Island. If you see in these pictures, the pictures above, this is the adult, the juvenile, and the hatchling of Komodo dragon in Komodo National Park. And if you can see the pictures below, there's three pictures of dragon in Forest Island. It's a little bit brighter and more yellowish color. Like other reptile, the Komodo dragon life cycle, it started from egg. A female usually lay an average 24 eggs, with the maximum recorded is 38 eggs in a single clutch in a single breeding season, which usually once in a year. The egg will hatch usually during the end of the rainy season between February to April. When it hatches, the hatchling is very bright in color and the size is so tiny, it's only 14 centimeters in length and weight less than 100 grams. Soon after it hatches, the juvenile will slightly climb to the trees and they spend the first year of their life in the trees, prey upon insects, geckos, and bird eggs. The juvenile, even though they start to live primarily in the ground, they still spend some time of their life in the tree. Let's have a look in this graph. If you see that the black bar is the frequency used by the hatchling and the gray bar is the frequency used by the juvenile. The hatchling, they only spend probably less than 3% of their life in the trees. They only touch the ground when they move from trees to another trees. While the juvenile, they spend about 70% of their life in the land, but they still use the trees, especially about 30% of their life, especially to avoid the predation from its conspecific larger dragon. The small dragon are quite active foraging. They hunt small mammals and snakes, and also flightless birds' eggs, such as a jungle fowl or megapod bird's egg. Komodo dragon is a solitary animal. It's very hard, or it's very rarely they're found in the groups in the wild. They reach the maturity age between 8 to 9 years old. The adult dragon frequently show fighting during the breeding season. The breeding season occurs around June and July, and soon after the mating, the female will start to prepare the nest by digging a nest chamber and some holes for decoys. She then will lay the eggs around August to September and guarding the nest until December, but a long time, for about 4 months. These activities was really hard for the female, not only effort for digging the nest, but also limiting her activities in hunting the prey. My colleague Danny observed during the one breeding season, about 4 to 5 months, the female only hunt 4 times of deer. The rest is fasting day. There are 3 types of the Komodo nest. The first one and the most frequently used is the mound nest. This nest is basically a modification from the megapod bird nest. The other nest was the hill nest and the ground nest. When the female lay the egg, sometimes the egg chamber is very deep, up to 2.5 meters deep. If you see this image, it's my colleague Danny, and we finished digging the Komodo nest after the egg hatch, and we found the remaining egg cell is just below his feet down there, and the surface of the nest is just above his raised hand. It's very deep, isn't it? When the dragon reach adult, and usually when they reach 20 kilogram or more, they already start to hunt larger mammals. They use sit or wait and ambush strategy as they become too heavy to actively forage, and also to conserve the energy. There are 3 main items or 3 ungulates that Komodo dragon usually prey on, especially for the big one. The first one is the Timor deer, the water buffalo, and the wild pig. Among these 3 ungulates, the most preferred prey item for Komodo dragon is the Timor deer. Our research shows that there are differences of body size Komodo dragon among the big island and small island. Let's have a look really close in this graph. This graph is show the percentage or the proportion of the 15% of the largest dragon in each island. The 2 big island, Komodo and Rinca, and 2 small island, Nusa Padang and Gili Muatan. In the big island, where deer they prey more abundance, the Komodo dragon tend to be bigger. The biggest dragon, or the 15% of the big dragon, usually weigh between 60 kilogram to 70 kilogram. While on the other hand, on the smaller island where deer is more or less abundant, the heaviest dragon or the big dragon usually only weigh between 15 to 20 kilograms. It's very different between the big island population and the small island population. Speaking about the body size, the large adult male is very big. They could reach up 3 meters and weigh almost 100 kilograms. While the female is tend to be smaller. The adult female, the maximum size of the female that we found is only 2.4 centimeters, and we never found any dragon that weigh more than 40 kilograms. So all the female usually less than 40 kilograms. The female also live shorter. The maximum, a very healthy individual can live up to 30 years, even though most of them died before 20 years. The males live a little bit longer, up to 40 to 60 years, but most of them died before 40 years. To understand this, let's have a look at this graph again. So this is the proportion of the Komodo dragon in Komodo National Park that we identified. It's from about 400 samples. The blue bar, it shows the percentage or the proportion of the males, and the red bar is the female, and on the bottom line, the axis here is the predicted age. You can see that very few males that we estimated the age between 30 and 40. Most of them probably died around 30 years. And if you look at the female bar here, very few of them We estimate the age is 20 to 30, because most of them usually died around 20 years, and none of the female live after 30 years. There are at least 57 species of bacteria that were identified from a collective saliva sample from 39 dragons from both from wild and captive animal. Please note that this is not in a single individual, so it's from collective sample. This paper by Montgomery et al. 2002 highlighted that there are more strain bacteria that found in the wild dragon compared to those that live in captive one, suggested that the bacteria might also come from their environment. This is not surprising if you look at this image below. You see that this is the image when the dragon prey or feed upon the dead buffalo carcass in the buffalo ponds. Yeah, there must be lots of bacteria that transport from the environment to the bacteria. The thing that always surprised me is it's amazing that how Komodo dragon that can have so many bacteria but without become infected by the bacteria. Again, Komodo National Park is the main distribution area for Komodo dragon. There are 5 major islands. The first and the biggest one is the Komodo Island. The second one is the Rinca Island, Padar Island, and there are 2 small islands, Nusa Kode and Gili Motang. Despite famous of 2 unique species, the Komodo dragon and the yellow-crested cockatoos, Komodo dragon is also rich. Komodo National Park, also rich in its biodiversity. It's a home for at least 18 species of mammals, 129 species of birds, 37 species of reptiles and amphibians, and the habitat, which is mainly predominantly savannas and deciduous mountain forests, it has at least 250 species of plants or vegetation. Komodo National Park is also home for nearly 4,000 individuals or inhabitants. You see that this is the image of the Komodo village in Komodo Island, and this is the smile of the kids in Komodo village. When human and wildlife live side by side, it's often quite challenging to be able to coexist. Conflict sometimes inevitable. In the line with the discovery of numerous emerging infectious disease or AIDs that have been identified in wildlife, none has created negative public perception on wildlife for this risk. This negative perception is considered as the most important threat to wildlife conservation. This paper that wrote by Butke et al. Highlighted that to address such situation require interdisciplinary collaboration in One Health context to mitigate the risk this disease and also to promote the benefit of wildlife, which will improve the people perception. In Komodo National Park, however, the authorities has implemented One Health context approach by protecting the ecosystem and limiting the interaction. There are only less than 5% of Komodo National Park is allowed for public for visitation and also for human settlements. If you see this map, the only place that allowed for tourists to come is only the green area here. And human settlements is and the area that allowed people to activities, the local people, is the brown area. It's only less than 5%. The 95% of the Komodo National Park is remain undisturbed and it's protected, the yellow and the red one. In sustainable ecotourism that Komodo National Park practice, the tourist or the visitor is also, they have to be guided by a ranger or the naturalist guide, and they only allowed to walk in the designated path or tourist trail. So there are no interaction between human and wildlife allowed. Through sustainable ecotourism, the park also promotes the benefit of wildlife, especially for the local community. If you see this image again, the ranger or the naturalist guide that walk to guide the tourists is mostly people from the local communities. So this practice, I believe that this practice has improved the people perception in wildlife and biodiversity in Komodo National Park to support the conservation of Komodo dragon in this area. That was my last slide, and here are some references if you would like to know more about the ecology of Komodo dragon. The list is available on our website here, and you may contact us and if you need to download or to want to read this article. Thank you very much. And the time I return to Sasrin.
Thank you, Mas Revo, for the excellent presentation. We now understand more about Komodo today. We just know that the Komodo with higher availability of prey are bigger than the Komodo live in a place where only few prey are available. Maybe that's also similar to humans. The Dutch people are tall and big compared to Indonesian due to nutrition. Okay, back to topic. We know that the conservation of Komodo also needs the collaboration of many disciplines as the application of One Health in conservation practices. Okay, then we continue to our last session, but not least. Our third speaker today is Timothy Jessop, or Tim. I will start to share my screen to give you a brief introduction of Tim. Okay. Wait. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Tim is a senior lecturer in physiology, Faculty of Science, Deakin University, Australia. He's also a scientific advisor in Komodo Survivor Program, Bali, Indonesia. And he finished his bachelor in James Cook University and continued his PhD in University of Queensland, Australia. Please welcome Tim Jessop. The screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Sasrin. That's very kind of you with that introduction, and thank you to the organising committee for the opportunity of speaking at whatever time it is where you are. It's a very cold 12 degrees where I am in Southern Australia at the moment. I'll just share my screen and we'll get going. All right, hopefully everyone can see this, and off we go. So Ahmed gave a very lovely introduction into the biology of Komodo dragons, and I'd like to sort of continue by sort of more focusing on some of the ecology or some of the interactions that Komodo dragons have with their environment. And I really want to focus on those ones that are probably really helpful or useful to explaining why Komodo dragons have persisted for so long in what are really quite difficult environments in terms of living on often very small islands. So what is it about ecology? Well, ecology is just really one of the many components that biologists need to understand about animals to explain how they deal with environmental variation. But it's a very important aspect of the different components that allow animals to survive through very long periods of time. So in the case of the Komodo dragon, we know that it's probably lived in Indonesia for at least a million years.
Sorry to interrupt, Tim. I think you haven't share your screen.
It says share for me. Sorry. Yeah. Am I blocked from your end at all? It says.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
No,
okay.
My fault.
Now
Sorry.
We can see.
Yeah, that would have been very interesting. My apologies for that. So, as I was saying, ecology is a really core component of several components that help explain how animals adapt to their environment and allow them to persist through time. So it's very, very important. And one of the things that we really know about animals that live on islands, they probably have it in general a bit harder than animals that we find on continents. And by that, all I'm meaning is that if you look at the extinction rates of animals, they tend to be much, much higher on islands than they are in continents. And there are a number of reasons for that, but we'll touch on some of the things that Komodo dragons do to make sure that they don't go extinct, because they have been incredibly successful And as Ahmad's already mentioned, you know, they're very, very unusual in the sense that they have a really small geographic range or a very small area in which they live. So that really poses some difficult challenges for how these animals
Sorry, Tim, sorry to interrupt. Could you please speak up a little bit? Thank you.
Is that better? Is that clearer or not?
Yeah.
Yes, it's clear. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize for that again. We'll keep plugging along. So when you think about what animals have to do on islands, one of the really most obvious thing is that they really need to adjust to very variable environments. So when we think about environmental variation for many animals, we can think about things like seasonal variation. As animals go into winter, they might need to do something very different to survive compared to living in a summer or springtime environment. Similarly, environments change over time, and it's really this type of variation that animals have to adjust or be able to survive to make sure that they can persist. Now, island environments are very, very different because particularly in places like Indonesia, which is very tropical, you may not see a lot of seasonal variation. It can be in some places, but in general, compared to other areas or at higher latitudes, the variation is very, very limited. But one thing that you can say about islands is that they differ in space very dramatically. So you don't have to go very far, for example, from a big island to a small island that might only be separated by a small stretch of ocean, and the environments can be very, very different. And it's that type of spatial difference in environmental variation that is really important for animals to be able to adapt. And Komodo dragons are very good at it. And some of the ways that they'll do this is that they can really adjust to that complexity and variation in terms of resources. And I'll show a very good example in a minute. The other thing that if you live on islands and you're generally in these very small populations, one of the biggest risks that you need to face is really dealing with animals that are very similar to you in terms of their needs. So animals often have to really do a lot to avoid competition with other members of their population. So they really need to avoid intraspecific competition. The other thing about living on islands is that you really don't want to have very strong interactions with other species, whether that be diseases, whether that be competitors, whether that be with predators. You really need to make sure that when you interact with other species in island systems where you're very, very isolated, that those interactions tend to be very weak. And I guess what I'd like to do today is start out by showing an example of what I mean by the type of variation that exists on islands. So here is a picture of Komodo National Park, and we should be familiar with that from what Ahmad was talking about before. And here is a very important food item, the rooster deer, which Ahmad mentioned before. But what he didn't mention was that if you go and sample or count the population numbers of these deer at different localities on these islands, you see, for example, that there is very large amounts of variation in the population size. And the main thing to note here is that if you look at the spatial scale, that the difference or the distance between islands is often not very, very large. So even that for islands that are close together, you may still get a very, very large amount of variation in very important resources that are essential to the survival of Komodo dragons. So as Ahmad kind of pointed out before, one of the best things that all animals can do is adjust their body size in relation to the resources. So if you're a Komodo dragon that lives on a very small island where you don't have a lot of prey resources, then it's a very big advantage in terms of your survival to be of a very small body size. So why do they have these small body sizes? Well, part of it, once you're smaller, is clearly that it reduces the amount of energy that individuals that live on these small islands would require to survive. So simply by reducing your body size, in the case of these Komodo dragons, they're able to really deal very effectively with a major source of environmental variation, which is the difference in the availability of prey on those islands. The other thing about living on islands is, as I've already mentioned, is that they may not vary much in time, but I've said already that they can vary a lot in in terms of their resources at really small spatial scales. So here we can see Rintra Island in the foreground, and over there we can see Komodo Island in the background. But even though these islands are quite close together, they can be very, very different. So how, again, should animals deal with living on islands, even though that they're very close together and they could easily swim across? How should they really think about dealing with this environmental variation? Well, one thing to do is to make sure that you don't move too far. So Komodo dragons are very interesting because unlike many other lizards, they're very, very mobile. They actually move a very large distance in terms of walking around in their environment in their day. And what you can generally see is that when Komodo dragons are sort of middle body sizes, they move more than when they're smaller or larger. And we think they do that because these sized dragons really have to seek out and search for a lot more small types of prey than smaller dragons or bigger dragons that only eat large prey. So very big ecological differences in their movement behavior. But what is really interesting is that if you look at Komodo dragons, even though they can move a big distance on a daily basis, they never use that movement to go very far outside of the immediate area in which they live. And what I mean by that is, it's a little bit like you running around a lot within your house, but never using that running to go a long distance, to go much further away. So Komodo dragons are very mobile, but they never move very far from, I guess, where they're born. And in fact, what we know is that Komodo dragons, even when the environmental conditions can be quite difficult, they will not leave those places. And we think that really this lack of movement to other areas or other islands, for example, is really important to them because it means that they become very adapted to their local environment. By moving to a different environment, even though it might seem like the conditions are better, if there are, for example, going from a big island to a small island where there's a lot less food, then you're going to be at a very big disadvantage if you're a Komodo dragon that's come off those big islands. So even though they move around a lot, they never really use that movement to move large distances. So they have very limited dispersal, which we think, again, is a very important way that they make sure that they don't have to deal with a lot of environmental variation in their ecology. Now, the other interesting thing about Komodo dragons is because of that body size, and Ahmad talked about that, is that as they change in body size, as they go from small to large, then they eat completely different types of food. Now, you can imagine, even with your own family, if you're sitting at home and you might only have one dessert, then there will be a lot of competition. But changing or providing different types of food and eating those at specific body sizes, Komodo dragons are very good at sharing their resources in their environment. And what I mean by that is that they're very, very efficient at utilizing resources because they don't compete a lot for the same resources, because as they change body size, their diet is changing. And they tend to do that through lots of different aspects of their ecology. So not only is their diet changing with their body size, but where they use the habitat or the particular types of vegetation communities that they prefer to live in is also changing as well. So Komodo dragons are very, very good at reducing competition. And one of the advantages of reducing competition, for example, is it means that you can really get high density populations. So for Komodo dragons, one of the hardest things to do is really live on these small islands where there's not a lot of environmental space. But if Komodo dragons are very, very efficient at sharing their resources, then Komodo dragons can really pack or have very high densities of individuals living in really small areas. So this is a beautiful picture of how Komodo dragons move within a valley. But as you can see, they move a lot, but they don't go very far outside of that local area. And the other thing that you can see here is all these overlapping colors, which represent the home range area, or the area in which an individual Komodo dragon lives. Now, what you can clearly notice is that all these home ranges are overlapping, which means that all these individuals of all different sizes can really live within the same area. So they're very, very effective, or very efficient at using space. Now, as we've already said, Komodo dragons are reptiles, and if they're reptiles, then they're ectotherms. And when they're ectotherms, we expect that their energy needs are much, much lower than compared to a similar size mammal, for example. So if you're a mammal or a reptile, when you eat food, what you can do with the energy from the food is very, very different. Now, if you're a mammal like this tiger, for example, and it's eating a deer here, what do you do with that energy? Well, some of that energy will go into these anabolic processes like growth, for example, but it's only a tiny little proportion. So it's really these anabolic processes from which animals derive energy to grow and reproduce. Okay, but what you notice is that if you're a mammal, the amount of energy that goes into growth or reproduction is very, very small compared to the Komodo dragon. So if a tiger and a Komodo dragon were to eat the same amount of food, the tiger would only invest or put 1% of that energy into growth and reproduction. In contrast, because the Komodo dragon is a reptile and has a very low metabolic rate, it can put a huge amount of energy into growth and reproduction, which really allows it to have much higher population densities within the same area, feeding on the same amount of food. So again, another really good example of how Komodo dragons are very, very efficient in their ecology, which helps them live on these small islands. And just to give you an example of the differences in these types of efficiency, if we compare the amount of biomass, which is really just the number of Komodo dragons multiplied by their body mass in a particular area, so say for example a square kilometre, and we look at this biomass, so the total amount of weight of Komodo dragons, and we compare it against other types of large predators around the world, then we can see Komodo dragons have a far greater biomass. So really important for allowing them to have very high density populations in very small areas within these island environments. And that's going to be very useful because one of the things that really makes animals sensitive to extinction is their population size. So predator biomass, and in particular for Komodo dragons, given that it is so very high, is going to be something that's going to be very useful to this species for living in island environments. Now, surprisingly, most of the time, when we think about predators, we know that they're feeding on prey, and Ahmad made mention that Komodo dragons really feed on, when they're large at least, 3 big prey animals. So the rooster deer, the water buffalo, and wild pig. Now, many other predators are able to regulate their prey populations by eating them to an extent that the population is decreased below what would be supported otherwise by the environmental conditions. However, what we find with Komodo dragons is that they have very weak predation effects on their ungulate prey. So if you change the density, this is simply more Komodo dragons along the x-axis, as that increases along the x-axis, and we look how that density changes affects the growth rate or the population size of either rooster deer or these wild pigs, then we see that there is no relationship. It's very, very flat. Now, in many other systems around the world, when you look at the effects of large predators on their prey, as the predator density increases, then you would see a slope in the prey population growth rate decreasing, because the rate of predation will be sufficient enough to drive prey population numbers below carrying capacity. And we think this type of weak predation, for lack of a better word, is very, very important again to the ecology of Komodo dragons, because what it really does is stabilize the interactions with very key species in these environments. So if populations are not varying in their size over time, then there is a much less risk of extinction. So these are just some of the things that we think Komodo dragons do in terms of their ecology to really solve the problem of living on these small islands. I would just like to acknowledge the various government organisations through which we collaborate in our research efforts. I'd also like to thank the various funding bodies that provide the very necessary money to allow Komodo Survival Program to do its very important conservation and monitoring activities. And thank you very much to everyone else out there who's listening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tim, for your wonderful presentation. We get deeper insight about Komodo ecology. We know that even though Komodo dragon size depends on the prey availability, but the dragon cannot regulate prey population. That's very interesting. Furthermore, we now understand how One Health is also important for Komodo conservation. So we move on to our next session, which is question and answer session 2. I will pass it on to Putu for this session. Please, Putu.
Thank you very much, Hastrin. Hello, everyone. I will not say welcome back to my channel, but welcome back to the Q&A section again. So we already have a lot of questions. Before we start the Q&A, I would like to say thank you to Pak Tim and Mas Revo for the awesome presentation. I also learned, this is my first time to learn about Komodo, and maybe most of our participants as well. We have a lot of questions. Maybe I will divide into 2 subsections. For the first question, is addressed to Mas Revo or Mr. Ahmad. It's from Aditya Yudana from Unair. According to you, how about conservation program in monitor lizard, Varanus salvator, regarding their wildlife trade? Because in East Java, I think there are too many hunters and middlemen which doing exploitation, and people also sold and consume their meat for culinary purposes. Yeah, the screen is yours.
So basically, I'm not really conducting research on farmed species, Salvator, but as far as my concern is the reason why Varanus salvator is widely harvested is there are 2 reasons. First is for the skin, for the trading the skin, and also for the meat, which they eat the meat of the salvator. And the reason why it is so heavily exploited because Varanus salvator is one of the farmed species that's very widely distributed, so it can be found anywhere, and also they also live quite close to human settlements, and they're quite adaptive. That's why people easily hunt them. It's very different with the Komodo dragon. Komodo dragon, in the other hand, is very restricted distribution, and most of the distribution area is protected, and the Komodo dragon itself is protected. So I think hopefully it's help answer the question. And one more, I think the number of population, the Varanus salvator is very abundant compared to Komodo dragon, which is very few. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mas Revo. Maybe this question also relate to Dr. Joko Pamungkas because he also concerned about the zoonosis disease. Dr. Joko, what do you think about the exploitation and in fact, a lot of people are consuming the monitor lizard. Is there any possibility that this is transmission from lizard to the human?
Okay. I don't think we should underestimate anything, even if there is no report until now about possibility of Komodo dragon to transmit any zoonotic disease, but we still have to be very, very cautious. And of course, as I said, that this is another way of campaign not to consume the wildlife, because we are not just avoiding the cross-species transmission from animal to human, but we also have to conserve their population in the wild. And in our case about pets as well, when we also try to get some examples of disease transmitted from bats in local Minahasa, not Sulawesi people. They have been telling us that we never get any disease by consuming the bats. Okay, because so far the people that are consuming the bats, they only handle the bats when they are cooked already, when they are served on the table. So they don't deal with the live bats. So our concern is actually with the hunters, with the pullers, yeah, and also the transports, and also the butchers who are preparing the food before they consume them and the people consume the food. When we actually talked to the hunters, they actually had some experiences when they got bitten or scratched by the bats and they got some fever, but they recovered. Yeah, but who knows in the future when there is some more virulent pathogens or dangerous viruses that may impact them, then the outcome will be different. So we have to be really careful in making them understanding. And the other way around, that not only through the health aspect, we also try to do the campaign of the bats' habitats not to be destroyed and not to be killed, because they don't know. Most of the people out there, they didn't know about bats' role in pollinating some fruits. And there are some literatures that bats actually pollinates about 300 fruits available, including durian. So then when we talk to the government's staff, central government about this, and they just realized, oh yes, oh, in 2 decades ago, we have some durians that are now extinct. Now we don't have this kind durian that we used to have. So this is a proof that we have to tell them in many different aspects, not only health, but also from conservation aspect. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joko. Talking about the future possibility of the emergence of disease is very interesting, but maybe we can talk again later in another webinar. Maybe we can make one more webinar. So for the next questions, maybe for this is for the two wildlife experts, Mas Ahmad and Dr. Jesop. Is there any chance that Komodo body size becomes smaller in small island? Also because they do the inbreeding, so it's not only because of the presence of the prey, but is it possibility come from the inbreeding? Maybe Mas Ahmad first.
I think Tim has explained a little bit more about the reason why they adapted. It's more based on the availability of prey, but maybe the inbreeding also have effect as well. But maybe Tim can explain more bit more later. Tim, I think one of our paper talking about the effect of the inbreeding and prey availability to Komodo dragon survival. Tim?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So thank you to the person who asked that question. It's very interesting, and one of the challenges of living on small islands for Komodo dragons is that there are multiple things going on. So there's certainly less food. There's certainly a smaller population, which does increase the chance of inbreeding. However, there's a difference between inbreeding and inbreeding depression. Certainly when you get inbreeding depression in reptiles, we don't necessarily see it manifested in body size. It can certainly affect aspects of the body shape or developmental trajectories and things like that. But we would suspect by now that if inbreeding depression was very strong, given that that island population has been very isolated for a very, very long time and had a very, very small population for a very long time as well, that those effects should have taken place. Now, on the flip side of that, there's also something called genetic purging, which is what we think some small populations are able to do to make sure that they do not succumb to the problems of inbreeding depression. However, if we would want to really ask your question, we would need to sort of bring dragons off those small islands and put them into a good environment. And then if it was just about food, the animals would grow. But if it was about inbreeding, even with more food, then we would see that they still stayed smaller than they should be with all that food. And that might be the only way that we could really answer that question effectively. But it's a very good question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tim. And the next question is from Dorothy Megarani from Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, Universitas Gadjah Mada. Her question is addressed to Dr. Tim. What are the considerations for the researchers who want to do a research about Komodo dragon to make sure that we are not threatening the ecology and the Komodo dragon itself?
That's a very, very good question again, and it really gets to the heart of animal welfare. And I can assure you, and Ahmad can talk about this as well, that Komodo Survival Program, which is the body that we do our research through, is very, very careful in the way that we conduct our activities. So, for example, when we go to one of these sites, we don't go for a very long period. If we capture an animal, we don't hold it for very, very long. We sort of basically release it from the trap after doing 5 minutes or 10 minutes of work, and we release those animals. And we don't go back and recapture those animals for at least a year. So we try and minimize the amount of stress that we place on those animals. And I guess I've had this type of question before, and the best way that I can kind of answer it is that in one way, by going back every year and recapturing the same individuals, in some cases we've recaptured individuals now close to over 18 or 19 years. Some of the, there's a few individuals out there that we've been able to do that and capture nearly every year. Now, I don't think we would be able to do that if our kind of research was really disturbing to these animals, because there are, as you probably no doubt know yourself, some animals are very sensitive to handling by researchers. But thankfully, and I would say like many large reptiles, they're pretty tough or pretty strong animals, and so they're able to deal with being handled. In terms of other impacts that researchers do, we're really using game trails or existing walkways or paths that are already built within the national park to really reduce our environmental footprint as well. So we're very, very careful, because at the end of the day, our mission is really about the conservation of the species, and it would be very, very bad from our perspective if we're trying to save a species, but we're actually impacting or giving it a problem. So we're very, very careful about that. Thank you. Mud, do you want to answer any more about that?
I think just one more sentence, that when we work in conducting research in Komodo dragon, we have a very strict standard operational procedure. We always have to make sure that's not only for the Komodo dragon, not only for the researcher, but also for the Komodo dragon. And to date, we already capture and measure more than 1,000 individuals. And some, as Tim said, that there are some individuals that we capture every year, then we never found any accidents, nor there are no dragon have been harmed, or no researchers have been beaten or any accident happened. So we all try to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is addressed for Mr. Ahmad. This is come from Leah from Udayana University. She's asking about your opinion about if it's any possibility for the animals that classified as Appendix 1 are still being traded, especially for Komodo.
Okay, so animal that listed as Appendix 1, it's basically it's not allowed to be transport or sell or sold and between country or between in location. So if someone still doing trading, it's mean that it's illegal. So Appendix 1 is very strict. So, and even though that, for example, that for transferring the from, if it's officially transferred from one zoo to another zoo, it's have to get the permit from the government, and it's not for the trading or commercial purposes. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Tim, do you want to add some information more?
No, I think that was a very good answer. Thank you.
Okay, so we move to the next question. It's come from Dr. Heri Wijayanto from Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, UGM. What are the main factors causing Komodo death? Like in elephant, the loss of the last molar is the main cause of elephant to die. Maybe this question can answer by Dr. Tim and Mas Revo, but maybe we'll go to Dr. Tim first.
It's another very fascinating question. So, one of the hardest questions in sort of studying wild animals is it's very hard to see how they die and what the causes of death might be. Now, you would expect, like any wild population, that there are multiple causes of death. And we certainly know that Komodo dragons senesce, or they get older, and as they get older, their growth rates slow down. They're not able to maintain the same level of body condition. And we think this sort of aging process is probably going to be the major way that they die. Part of the reason for that is that there aren't a lot of other predators for big Komodo dragons other than Komodo dragons. Now, I mean, it's unfortunate given that we're really talking to a big audience of vets that we don't know very much about the role of disease in Komodo dragons, and it's something that someone needs to work on at some point. It's not going to be us because we don't have that type of skills, but there's no doubt that disease could play in with senescence. We certainly know that some Komodo dragons get killed by other Komodo dragons. It's not a lot, but that's a source of mortality that's out there. So we definitely know about senescence. So Komodo dragons age like humans, and they don't need to die from a disease. They just die from old age. We know that Komodo dragons probably get killed occasionally by other Komodo dragons as food, particularly if they're smaller. And then there has to be, at some point, potentially some type of pathology or pathological agents in that environment that may also contribute as a source of mortality. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, okay. So I think just a little bit more that, like Tim said, that it's unfortunate. It's very difficult to observe the animal in the wild, and I think that is like we mentioned earlier that we still need the collaboration. So still need a lot of people to being involved in Komodo dragon research, not only the ecology but also in the health. And one thing that's really interesting, what makes quite difficult to understand about how they died, is we rarely found any carcass or dead Komodo dragon in the wild, because usually after a dragon died, it takes no more than 1 day, the dragon will disappear, whether it's eaten by the other dragon or the other animal. So it's very difficult, and we rarely found any dead dragon in the wild, the carcass. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a very interesting fact that we just know that there are still a lot of things that's still waiting to digging up with the collaborations with the research. I believe maybe after this we can have more collaborations from the participants so we can learn more about the Komodo. So let's move for the next questions. This one for Mr. Ahmad. The question is come from Fihir, come from the Poltekkes Kemenkes Mataram. He's asking about how you can predict the age of the dragon. Do you have any method? And the second one, how the Komodo National Park keep reserve natural food or dragons such as deer, buffalo, and so forth.
Okay, it's a really good question. I will try to answer. Probably Tim will get at later. So basically, we estimate the age of the dragon using the growth rate. So we have so many dragon that we've been observed for so long time, and we did some statistic that Tim can explain a little bit more. I will more answer the second question. Then how the the Komodo National Park manage the prey, isn't it? So basically, all the national park, in the national park, everything is in the very normal or natural condition. So there are no food supplements. So it's just the mechanism of the wildlife that works over there. So all the food for the dragon is naturally there. So and yeah, I think that the dragon as well, they have one mechanism called cannibalism. As a apex predator, they have to maintain the population. So to be not overpopulated, because if it's overpopulated can diminish all the prey item. That's why they have this such of system. Tim, can you add more about?
Yeah, I think that was a good answer as well. I don't think it really needs to be expanded on that. The national park obviously does a very good job in terms of looking after the landscape and the habitats within the national park, and that's going to be the major way that you can sort of conserve those prey species that are really important. The other thing about the islands are probably actually better for deer than they are for Komodo dragons. If you look at the picture behind Ahmad, you can see there's a lot of savanna on those hills and there's lots of grass. And that's really good for deer. And so the environmental conditions are actually really good for them, probably better than Komodo dragons that prefer the vegetation that is more forested and which is just generally smaller in its amount on those islands. So it's probably good protection and also the type of environmental conditions out there that really help deer.
Okay. Okay, that's all, Dr. Tim?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yep.
Okay. So the next question, maybe this is for the last questions. This question come from Ahmad Bayu Aryawan from Halu Oleo University. The question is addressed to Dr. Timothy. What is the difference between deer for conservation and meat productions? Because it will be problems about animal welfare and become controversy until now. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a hard question because it's not something that we sort of think about in terms of deer. So obviously the deer within the national park are protected. So they're not really up for human consumption. And it's very rare that that would ever happen. And if it did happen, then it's an illegal activity. It's a criminal activity. So I'm not sure I can really answer that question very effectively. And I apologize for that in advance because I really don't know very much about meat management of deer, to be honest. For Ahmad, you can have a go if you like.
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit more, but maybe I should mention as well that as far as I concerned that Komodo dragon and also deer distribution, it's not only in Komodo National Park and on the other islands, for example, in Flores Island. In Komodo National Park, all the animals protected and not only protected species, but every animal is protected, so it's quite safe over there. But on the other hand, we know that even though it's protected in some part of area, for example, in Flores and in other part of Indonesia, people are still hunting the deer. But we know that hunting deer is also protected species. So basically, it's illegal activities. So it's not very common. So it's not something that illegally do. And regarding of the meat production and other activities, probably Pak Joko can mention whether that possible disease from the deer to human if they are deer. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Maybe this question is, he means about the deer that we grow in the island for as the prey for the Komodo. Maybe it's maybe we can relate with the natural selections. Can we say like that? I mean, like maybe because maybe he related the deer with the conservation. Maybe it's because we grow the deer just for the food for the Komodo, not for the welfare of the animal itself.
So I think there are concern about the to overcome the deer depletion, not on national park, but under part. For example, in the Flores, which is different area, some of the distributed area on Komodo in Flores, I said that it's not in Komodo National Park, where the deer is heavily harvested. I think that's there's the thing that the government start to think about to reintroduce the deer, but again, that when we're trying to introduce something into the wildlife, I believe that we have to make sure that the deer that will be introduced is safe from any disease, so it doesn't give we think that it's good way, but by the end it can create another problem for the deer population, the wild deer population, or in Komodo dragon. I think that's maybe Pak Joko can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. But I'm so sorry that I cannot continue the sessions because we are running the time. I'm sorry, Dr. Joko, that we cannot continue the Q&A sections. And everyone, I have to close the Q&A sections. I believe that we can see all of the questions come up, keep pop up in the Q&A sections. If I want, I can ask everything that you write down here, but Sachin already gave me a sign that I have to close and end these sections. So thank you very much again to Dr. Tim, to Mas Revo and Dr. Joko for the Q&A sections, and I will give the screen back to Sachin.
Okay, thank you, Putu, for moderating the question and answer session too. I know the time wouldn't be enough to answer all the questions as we have more than 20 questions already.
Yes.
So we are already at the end of the session. I'm thrilled to be here today. We are very challenged as a global community by coming together in this community of practice, bringing together our disciplines. We can really be stronger together as one health global community. We're so fortunate to wrap up the webinar session with all of our amazing speakers, Dr. Joko, Mas Revo, Dr. Tim. Thank you so much for your time and willingness to be our speakers. Also, thank you to Prof. Agus and Mbak Niken from Indohun, and of course, for our team, Prof. Wayan as the coordinator, Putu, Mia, Rosa, and Chitra as my incredible colleagues. Last but not least, our wonderful international participants of today's session. It's my pleasure to guide you through this webinar. For the speakers, please don't go as we will have a short photo shoot. Okay, please turn on your video and I'll have a photo shoot. I will count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, another one. Okay.
Let me put on my glasses. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, I will make another picture. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Dr. Joko, Mas Revo, and team. If you have other agenda, you may leave. For the attendance list and feedback, I'm going to share my screen.
So I already shared the presentation file to Prof. Wayan.
Yeah.
If you want to share with the participants,
Joko, yes.
please do so. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for the chance.
Thank you, Dr. Joko.
Thank you.
Thank you for all speakers.
So this is the link for the e-certificate, bit.ly/interwebinar OHCC UGM. Please fill in before 3:30. So in about 30 minutes. The e-certificate will be shared through email about 1 week after this webinar. The materials will be shared after getting permission from the speakers. And this session is being recorded in YouTube Live and in OHCC channel, bit.ly/OHCC UGM, and your attendance is considered to be recorded. So please follow our social media in Instagram, OHCC UGM, Twitter, OHCC UGM, LinkedIn, OHCC Universitas Gadjah Mada, Facebook, One Health UGM, and also YouTube, One Health UGM. So see you again in our next international webinar on 7 July 2020. It's next week. So I will wait for another 5 minutes for you to fill in the link for the e-certificate.
Okay, thank you, team. Thank you, Mas Revo. Thank you, Pak Joko, for your presentation.
Thank you, Prof. Wayan.
You're welcome, Fayan.
Yeah, don't forget for next year, we will have a Komodo summer course again in July. Please arrange your time.